My husband's family and I don't have the best history, especially with my mother-in-law. Here's a bit of backstory. My husband, Kyle, is one of 2 children. He has always been the golden boy, even though he has an older sister. My mother-in-law, Monica, is a full-blown clinical narcissist. She would demand gifts on Kyle's or his sister's birthdays, saying they wouldn't be here without her. Kyle has told me that growing up, whenever he achieved something, she made it about herself. When I first started dating Kyle and visiting his house, Monica was as nice as could be. But as our relationship grew more serious, her behavior worsened. It really escalated when we decided to get married 3 years ago. She interfered and made wedding planning a nightmare. Thankfully, Kyle and I had decided from the start to pay for the wedding ourselves to avoid anyone meddling in the process. When Monica tried to change our venue or the wedding layout, I politely declined her suggestions. She then complained to Kyle, who tried to talk to me about compromising, but I told him our decision was final. I had always wanted a casual, fun, non-religious wedding with a mismatched bridal party look from a loose color palette. The only thing I asked of Monica and my bridesmaids was to pick a dress within my color palette and run it by me before purchasing it so I'd know what I was working with. My mother and the rest of the bridesmaids showed me their options, and I never told them no or asked them to change a thing. Monica, however, never showed me any options. I kept asking for months leading up to the wedding, but she always found an excuse. On the day of my wedding, Monica showed up in an off-white dress to everyone's shock. It was a medium-length dress with a transparent chiffon layer and a bolero. She looked triumphant as she smirked at me, and I knew then she would be a pain in my ass forever. I burst into tears, and my husband immediately asked her to either change or leave the venue. My father-in-law didn't want to drive her back and started to argue with my husband. In the end, to keep the peace, I let Monica attend our wedding in her dress. It was so embarrassing for our guests to notice her dress and be surprised. I ignored her throughout the wedding and didn't speak a single word to her. My husband knew how upset I was and told me to let it go, saying it didn't matter who wore a white dress. I was the bride, after all. It really upset me that he didn't understand how callous his mother was to wear a color no mother should wear to her son's wedding. I decided to forgive her, even though she never apologized. Her narcissism didn't stop there. When we were trying to get pregnant, it was a tough time for us. I had a miscarriage once, so when I found out I was pregnant again, I was understandably nervous. Kyle was excited to be a dad and understood why we couldn't share the news immediately with our family. He went with me to every doctor's appointment, read parenting books with me, and even set up a cute nursery for our baby. 2 months later, we decided it was time to share the exciting news. We had crossed the crucial first trimester milestone and were ready to spread the joy to our loved ones. We invited all our parents, close family, and friends for lunch. When they arrived, they expected a regular lunch, but their expressions shifted to joy and amazement when they noticed my growing stomach. My mother started crying and was overjoyed to be a grandmother soon. However, Monica had a completely different reaction. Instead of sharing in the joy, she reacted angrily upon learning we had kept the pregnancy hidden. She felt left out and accused me of intentionally excluding her. Despite my attempts to explain, she continued to look pissed and refused to engage with me further. Her disapproval cast a shadow over what should have been a joyful family occasion. Throughout the night, Monica didn't address me at all. She displayed disrespect not only towards me but also towards my mother, who had always been kind to her. Monica remained unresponsive during discussions, buried in her phone while everyone else engaged in the family gathering. It was clear she was upset, and her discontentment was palpable. She openly expressed to everyone how she had no idea about my pregnancy, making her feel as if she had lost precious time with a grandchild who hadn't even been born yet. As the tension escalated, I decided to step out for a moment to gather myself. My mother noticed my distress and came to comfort me until I felt composed enough to return. As the night ended, Monica made a deliberate point of saying goodbye to me last. The entire day she had barely exchanged more than a hi and bye with me. Later, when my husband walked them to the car, they ended up having a heated argument. I could hear it clearly standing in the foyer. Monica vented her complaints about me, further escalating the situation. Thankfully, all our guests had left by then, so it was just me, my parents, Kyle, and his parents. She angrily told him she couldn't believe I had the audacity to keep the pregnancy from her and that I didn't consider family at all. My husband calmly let her know that he and I had both decided to wait until we were out of the danger zone before sharing the news. Hearing this, Monica started yelling. "This is our grandchild we're talking about. I deserve to know from the very beginning." "Mom, we just wanted to be cautious before giving the good news." "Cautious? I am your mother. You should have trusted me with this. I know this is all her fault. You let her dictate whatever she wants. Grow a pair." Kyle's face turned red with embarrassment as he looked at his mother miserably. I was unaware of the tears streaming down my face. The sharpness of her words left me hurt and bewildered. I tried to intervene, but my mother stopped me by whispering that if I said anything, Monica would find a way to jump at me. This was absolutely true because I was sure Monica just wanted to fight with me, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction, so I kept my mouth shut. My mother-in-law told Kyle that he should open his eyes and see the truth, that I was controlling everything and she should have been the first to know if her son was having a child. Eventually, my father-in-law urged her to calm down and drove her away. As you can imagine, this wasn't the last time she acted this way. Her list of blowing things out of proportion and acting entitled is endless. Here are a few examples. She tried to teach our baby to call her Ma instead of Grandma, which infuriated me. She would beg to babysit our child and then make sure everyone knew how much she helped us, claiming we always needed her. When I had health issues after pregnancy, she told me I needed to be a better mother and should get over myself. Due to these incidents and many more, my relationship with Monica has never been great, but I tolerate her for the sake of my husband. Recently, my in-laws moved into a new place and invited us to check it out. We were quite busy, so we couldn't go. Kyle wanted me to go alone with our child, Debbie, but I was hesitant. He urged me to go so his mother would stop calling him about it. Begrudgingly, I agreed to go over the weekend. Debbie had a friend's birthday party, so I dropped her off and asked my mother to pick her up. Debbie loves spending time with her grandparents. It was a sunny Friday afternoon when I went to check out my in-laws' new place. The property was massive and looked like my father-in-law had spent a lot on it for his retirement. The house was huge, with a mix of modern and classic styles. The yard was filled with green plants and fragrant flowers. When I rang the doorbell, my mother-in-law opened the door. She looked excited at first, thinking it was Kyle, but then saw it was just me. She looked confused and asked where Kyle and Debbie were. I told her Kyle had an appointment and Debbie was at a friend's birthday party. This really upset her, and she started complaining about how selfish we all were not to find time for her. I tried to change the topic by telling her I was there and would love to check out her new place. She smiled a bit sadly and invited me inside. The inside of the house was just as fancy. The entrance had high ceilings and everything was nicely decorated. My sister-in-law, Haley, and her 11-year-old son, Jake, were also there. I greeted them warmly. Haley, much like her mom, never seemed to be a fan of mine. I couldn't figure out if it was a personal issue or just to please her mom, but she rarely engaged with me. Monica informed me that my father-in-law was out with a friend, so she had invited Haley and Jake over for some quality time. I nodded politely and tried to strike up a conversation with Jake about school. While we were discussing school, Monica suddenly shifted the conversation to her recent clothing purchases. She mentioned she wanted me to come over to give her advice on her new wardrobe. This caught me off guard because she never sought my advice on anything before. I tried to hide my surprise and responded politely, saying, "Oh, that's nice. I'd be happy to help." It felt a bit strange, given our history, but I decided to see the positive side and embrace the opportunity to bond over something as simple as fashion. She seemed pleased with my response and led me to her pride and joy, her newly built walk-in closet. As we approached the impressive display of clothes, shoes, and accessories, I couldn't help but admire her lavish collection. While I was admiring the outfits, my mother-in-law eagerly began showing me different pieces, asking for my opinion on colors and styles. It was surreal given our rocky history, but I tried my best to be helpful and provide thoughtful suggestions. She then encouraged me to look through her closet while she stepped away for a moment. As I nodded and began checking out her new clothes, I suddenly heard the pattering of feet behind me. Before I could turn around, my sister-in-law's son, Jake, gave me a push, causing me to stumble into the closet. He swiftly locked the door behind me. I fell face first into the closet, my head and teeth hurting from the impact. At first, I couldn't comprehend what had just happened. The initial shock gave way to a sense of confinement and panic as I realized Jake had turned off the light switch, which was outside the closet door, and locked me in. I was enveloped in darkness. Feeling claustrophobic, shocked, and terrified, I began banging on the closet door, desperately calling out for help, but my pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears. I fumbled for my phone and hastily switched on its flashlight. Anxiety crept in as I noticed my dwindling battery, worrying that my phone might die before I could escape. I've had an irrational fear of darkness ever since I accidentally locked myself in my grandmother's closet as a child. That terrifying experience left me with a lingering fear that resurfaced whenever I found myself in darkness. I continuously called out to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law for assistance, but my calls went unanswered. I was confused and isolated, especially since I could hear them laughing loudly downstairs. In a last-ditch effort, I decided to call my husband, Kyle. After a few rings, he casually answered. Desperation in my voice, I explained the situation. "Kyle, thank goodness you picked up. Something terrible has happened. I need your help." Kyle, seemingly unfazed, asked what was going on. I recounted the incident. "Your nephew just pushed me and locked me inside the closet at your mom's place. He switched off the lights. I've been banging on the door, but no one has come to rescue me. You know how terrified I am of dark spaces." Less sympathetic, Kyle retorted, "Are you seriously calling me in the middle of work for this? This isn't even an emergency. Just call my mother, who's inside the house, instead of calling me." Frustrated, I replied that I had called his mother and sister several times, but they weren't picking up. I explained how I didn't have much battery left and using my phone's flashlight was draining it more. I begged him to come over and help me, reminding him how scared I was of the darkness. I had talked to him at length about this. Kyle, unmoved, said, "Locked in a closet? Seriously? No, I can't come over. I'm busy right now. Find someone else to help you." To my dismay, he nonchalantly dismissed my plea for help and cut the call short. I was stunned by his reaction. The growing panic pushed me to keep banging on the closet door, desperately calling for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but their phones remained silent. Feeling trapped and helpless, I decided to call my father-in-law, the only person left who I could turn to. Knew he had been out with his friends, but I had no one else to call. The phone rang, and I held my breath, hoping he would answer. When he picked up, I nervously explained the situation, revealing that Jake had locked me in the closet and no one was responding to my calls. He immediately assured me he would come home as quickly as possible and was shocked that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law couldn't hear me all this time. After what felt like an eternity, I heard voices outside. I recognized my father-in-law's voice, directing someone to unlock the closet door. My anxiety began to subside as I realized help was finally on its way. The door creaked open, and I squinted against the sudden light. My sister-in-law and father-in-law stood there, concern and frustration on their faces. I came out of the closet, disoriented, but grateful to be free from that confined space. My father-in-law asked my mother-in-law why I was locked in her closet. She feigned innocence. I recounted the incident, detailing how Jake had pushed me into the closet and locked it. However, both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law scoffed, dismissing my words. They insisted Jake would never do something like that. Frustrated and angry, I questioned why they hadn't come to check on me or responded to my banging on the door. They claimed they were in the backyard, showing Haley and Jake the new rose garden. Jake was peeking from the door, so I directed my anger at him, questioning why he would lock me inside. My sister-in-law interrupted, insisting her son would never do such a thing, and claiming I must have closed the door myself and the key fell out. Their blatant lies left me beside myself with frustration and disbelief. This didn't explain how the lights got turned off. My father-in-law tried to calm me down, and I realized that no matter what I said, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would defend each other. Defeated and hurt, I returned home. I called my mother on the way, apologizing that I couldn't pick up Debbie for the night and that she might have to stay over at their place. Trembling with shock, my mother knew something was wrong, but I didn't have the energy to tell her what had just happened. I reached home and waited for my husband to return so I could confront him about what his family had done to me. However, during dinner when I recounted the incident, he berated me for overreacting and accused me of being childish. He insisted my accusations about his family were ridiculous and refused to believe his nephew could have locked me inside the closet or that his mother and sister had knowingly refused to help me. He justified his actions, saying he wasn't at my beck and call and I needed to be more understanding. With everyone gaslighting me, I started to doubt myself. To avoid further conflict, I chose not to argue with him any further. I retreated to bed, enveloped by profound loneliness, struggling to understand what had happened. The weight of the incident pressed heavily on my chest, and the feeling of being dismissed and misunderstood by my husband lingered. I knew what had happened wasn't merely a prank. It was intentional, calculated, and deeply humiliating, especially since everyone knew I was afraid of the dark. The following day, while grappling with the emotional aftermath of the previous day's ordeal, I received a TikTok link from my cousin. She asked if the video featured me. Opening the link, I was horrified to see that my nephew Jake had recorded the entire incident and shamelessly posted it for his followers on TikTok. He explained how he wanted to prank me and locking me inside the dark closet was his perfect plan. He hid the camera in the corner and then ran to push me inside. My blood boiled with anger. Infuriated, I shared the video in our family chat, demanding apologies now that I had proof. I also told my sister-in-law to make Jake delete the video immediately. Instead of acknowledging the severity of the situation, my mother-in-law brushed it off, saying it was really funny and claiming that boys will be boys. My sister-in-law joined her, insisting I shouldn't be bothered by the video and should just let it go as it was a harmless prank. I warned them that if Jake didn't remove the video, I would take legal action. My mother-in-law replied that I was being too much and needed to chill out and learn to be a part of the family. Fed up with their lack of empathy, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called the police and provided them with the evidence. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, they agreed to visit my sister-in-law and question her about why her 11-year-old child had a TikTok account and was posting such prank videos. Later, my sister-in-law called me angrily, asking if I seriously had the audacity to file a complaint against her. I told her that I had and that I was willing to take this to court. She started yelling at me, but I quickly informed her that I was recording the conversation and would happily give it to my lawyer. She shut up after that. Am I the asshole for teaching my husband's family a lesson for locking me inside the closet for over an hour? Update 1. In just a few hours, I received thousands of comments, and I'm glad to see that the majority understand why I involved the police. I've been receiving multiple calls from my in-laws asking me to withdraw my statement to the police. No official case has been filed yet, as my nephew is still a child, so the police are investigating to determine the appropriate course of action. My husband, who had no idea about this, erupted when he came back from work. He had tried calling me during the day, but I had been busy with the police. When he returned, I knew we were going to have this conversation. Kyle is convinced that what I've done has totally destroyed the family and says I shouldn't overreact to such a harmless prank. He continues to believe that Jake is just a child and shouldn't be punished. I've talked with my parents and sister about this. My family knows about my phobia of dark spaces, and they are shocked that no one came to rescue me and, more importantly, that my husband isn't advocating for me. My dad had a strong word with my husband, telling him that if I had called him for help while stuck in the dark closet, it should have been his responsibility to either come to help me or immediately call his parents to get me out. The fact that he didn't do either doesn't sit right with me or my family. Thanks to everyone's comments, I can see that my husband and his family's dismissive attitude has been going on for a long time, and I have been blind to it. I will continue to update you when there are further developments. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update, and there has been a major development. Sister-in-law's husband, Vic, who was out of town, recently returned and found out about what had happened between me and Jake. He completely lost it and asked my nephew to immediately take down the video and apologize to me personally. When my sister-in-law tried to defend her son's actions, Vic threatened to kick him out if he ever disrespected others like that. This was all told to me by Vic when he visited me. I agreed to meet up in hopes of getting to the bottom of this incident. Vic came over with Jake, who looked sad, likely having been scolded. As soon as we sat down, Jake started apologizing. He admitted to pushing me into the closet, but said it wasn't entirely his fault. Vic and I looked at him curiously. Jake revealed that he had talked to my mother-in-law about his TikTok account and prank videos his friends played on others. She encouraged him to try it on someone in real life. Jake told her he didn't think it was a good idea to prank family members, but she insisted it was okay to prank me since I was just married into the family and not technically his relative. I was shocked to hear this. Vic asked Jake if he was lying to dodge responsibility, but Jake began to weep, saying we could check his phone for their conversation. He showed us the chats, and I was horrified to see them. For someone her age to incite a child to such actions because she disliked me was appalling. I saved the screenshots to my phone and advised Jake against following her suggestions, emphasizing it was wrong. Jake nodded solemnly. Vic, equally taken aback, expressed his dismay and reconsidered allowing his child around my mother-in-law. He expressed regret for not being there to prevent Jake's actions and urged me to retract my statement to the police. I assured them I would discuss it with my lawyer and the police on the condition that Jake never uploaded the video again or kept a copy. Jake assured me he had deleted the video. Since this conversation, I've started questioning my entire relationship with my mother-in-law. It's clear now she was behind the prank and encouraged Jake to do her dirty work. I can't be around her ever again, not knowing what else she might do. Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been 4 months since my last update. I have moved out of my husband's place and am staying with my parents. As I previously mentioned, my mother-in-law was behind everything. When I confronted her, she refused to accept her mistakes, even after I showed her the screenshots. She tried to accuse Jake of manipulating and photoshopping them. Her lies quickly fell apart when I threatened legal action. Mother-in-law begrudgingly admitted she had planned this with Jake and thought it was the perfect time to prank me when I visited alone. She said my sister-in-law was in on it too, and they enjoyed hearing me scream for help. She begged me not to pursue it further, promising never to do it again. Fortunately, I had recorded our conversation, so I sent the voice recording to our group chat. I also sent a text to my sister-in-law expressing my disappointment and hoping her son would turn out better than her. As for my husband, our relationship deteriorated. Despite the evidence, he never apologized for what his family put me through. Seeing my family rally behind me made me realize I wasn't overreacting and that what happened was a big deal. Although I decided not to take legal action, I couldn't forgive and forget. There was no going back, and with my husband supporting them, there was nothing left to fight for. I moved out to start divorce proceedings. He wasn't surprised and didn't fight me when I announced I wanted a divorce. It has been extremely hard, as I genuinely loved him and thought we would grow old together. But these last few months have been eye-opening, and I deserve to put myself first. I'm grateful to everyone in the comments section and my family for helping me see the truth about my